Hi everybody. One of the good things about living in the Scottish borders is that I know of a fellow Brendan and Steve supporter across at Berwick, Karen Ashley. I know that there's supporters up in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and a lovely lady who I know, Lorna, lives 7 miles away in Selkirk. And I once mentioned that I was down at the pub, the Cross Keys at Ancrum, and met a girl working behind the bar, and she knew all about, or she had watched Making a Murderer. But in general, in the Scottish borders, there are very, very few people who even have Netflix, for that matter. Here in the Scottish borders, most people, quite a lot of people, don't even have any kind of satellite TV. They're not interested in internet, definitely not Facebook and all the usual stuff that a lot of us are used to. So, for want of a better word, you know how we've got, obviously we've got terminology here. We've got guilters and truthers, or let's call it truthers and non-truthers. And then we've got you know, veterans and newbies. Here in the Scottish border, we've got MAM virgins, as I would call them, people who haven't got a clue about Making a Murderer. And quite a lot of people, when they see my flag, they immediately ask me what it's all about, and I explain to them. So what is Making a Murderer all about? It's about a guy who lives in Wisconsin, in Manitowoc County, who, because of his, shall we say, colourful past, you know, certainly not a saint, some unpleasant things that he did, although there is debate as to whether the cat incident really was him, or I believe one of the Yander brethren, was it Tom Yander? I can't remember. But anyway, the bottom line is he did the whatever it was, 9 months for that. So therefore we've got a character who was definitely on the radar of law enforcement. Let's put it that way, because that's fair enough, isn't it? You know, he was definitely somebody that law enforcement was keeping an eye on. And of course he ran his cousin off the road, and quite despicably, it must be said, pointed a gun at her. What he was going to do, we don't know, because she pointed out, look, I've got my child in the car, and it was left at that. It didn't go any further. We then have Stephen Avery being convicted, being accused, and as far as most people are concerned, framed for the attack on Penny Bernstein. Why do we use the word framed? The fact that the sheriff, Tom Kazurek, I'm going to get you for it, whether you did it or you didn't. We've got obviously the lovely Judy de Verbiage, putting ideas into the head of Penny. Then we have, of course, the pencil himself, Jean Couchet. Did he trace it? Did he copy it? I think he traced it. I think there's no doubt about that. He simply had the photograph under the piece of paper and just presented it to Penny. There you go. That's what you told me. Utter nonsense. And we'll get onto the phone call later. He did 18 years until the DNA evidence proved that he wasn't the perpetrator, that it was Gregory Allen, who had gone on to attack other women. So when Steve was released and exonerated in 2003, he immediately received $25,000 for being wrongfully convicted. He also, the Wisconsin Innocent Project got it was about 14,000 for, you know, for helping him to get out as their sort of payment for uncovering this wrongful conviction, and to acting on his behalf. And then Steve took out a civil suit through Glyn and Kelly for 1.2 million. Meanwhile, Mark Gundrum was busy trying to sort out a nice big $450,000 payment for him. And at some point in between him getting out in 2004, when he took out the civil suit for 36 million, he was offered this 450,000, and then it came to light once depositions were starting to be taken about the fact that Andy Coleman had received that telephone call. And of course we get Peg likes a lager, and the Attorney General's office deciding that really nobody was to blame. This is what escalated it to 36 million. And when you explain and you give all the facts to people who have no idea about it, and then you explain it in those sort of details what happened, then when you tell them, and guess what? He was set up a second time, and this is what happened. He was accused of murdering this photographer. If you present the facts to people who have never heard of making a murder before, just in simple terms, spent 18 years, wrongfully convicted, released, found out that he should have been released 8 years previously, people get it. You know, I've never ever, you might say, well, I'm biased. No, I just present the facts as I see them to other people, and they are gobsmacked at what has happened. Some of them less so than others. Some of them realise that this sort of stuff does go on, that there's other cases very similar. I'm finding out about other cases through Making a Murderer. I have delved into a lot of the information that's available out there, hundreds and hundreds of hours of YouTube videos, speaking with experts when it comes to the law, hundreds of messages to and from various people who are experts on the law, reading, of course, various books. I forgot to mention, of course, you know, the books to read. Well, the ones I've read were Mike Griesbach, first of all. My daughter got it by mistake, thinking that it was a good book, and it was the first 2/3. The Unmaking a Murderer by Sean Atwood, really good. Then, of course, I forgot to mention recently Jerry Butin's book. How can I forget that? On Thursday, I'm going to Amsterdam to see him and David Rudolph. I better not tell him that I forgot his book, because I'll be in big trouble. Anyway, obviously Chad has, bless him, has shared just about the full content of his book with me, and we still chat regularly. And then, of course, John Farrak's book. I'm thoroughly enjoying that. I love the line about Andy Coleman and Jim Link being the two crackerjack detectives from Manitowoc County. I love his sense, that kind of sense of humour. Absolutely brilliant. The crackerjack detectives. Anyway, let's move on. As I say, I've spoken with lots of people about the case. None of them ever think, oh, hold on a sec, are you sure? You know, the blood found in the car, the key found in his residency, you know, the bones in his burn pit. When you're giving them the information, they never ever come back and say, I don't know, Paul, I think this guy sounds guilty. They all get it. They all get it. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science, is it? You know, they are, as the dude once told me. I once asked him what CYA meant. It means cover your arse. And I didn't know that. When he explained it to me, it all made perfect sense. Of course, that's what they're doing. And, you know, we can almost sort of accept that that's human nature. I got in touch with one of the sort of pro-guilty YouTubers who I sent him. I wrote a comment on Roberta Glass's one of her videos in which she, I think I mentioned, you know, the sort of interviewing Ken Kratz, and immediately she replied back with the, "Is that all you've done? Is watch a documentary?" And it's like, well, let's put it this way. I stayed polite. In fact, Erekose himself congratulated me on what I had written back to her. She then replied back about the fact that, because I'd asked her, "Are you sure that Steve, in your opinion, Stephen is guilty, or is it just that you want him to be guilty?" She replied back with all this stuff about, you know, the fact that he was 18 years, spared all these women from him, and of course he's guilty. And the other thing she added was, it may not be the perfect system, but it's the best. It's the best. It's not completely, you know, fail safe or whatever, you know, perfect, but it's the best. Well, this is the problem, isn't it? You know, it isn't quite perfect, and this is the one case that's, well, we're finding out that there's lots of cases, but this is one case in particular that has really caught the attention of the whole world. But as I say, when you're dealing with these guilties, all you got to do is just, as Kathleen Zellner said, give them all the info. A bit like, and when she was talking about Judge Hamilton, make sure that you give them, you present to them all of the information, and slowly but surely they will get it. Talking about the guilties, there's been a few tweets recently by Kathleen Zellner talking about the bag on the head, and I think quite a few people are wondering what on earth is that on about. And she's talking about in 6 days' time. I'm pretty sure December the 8th, nothing to do with her filing on December the 20th. I'm sure that December the 8th was confirmed as the release date for this new documentary called Convicting a Murderer, in which Erekose thinks that he might have been interviewed and could well be featured on it. The trailer claims that this film by Sean Reck is going to look at both sides of the argument. We wait to see. This is why Kathleen Zellner is particularly interested, because if you're going to present both sides of the argument and you're going to present, you know, why people think that he's guilty, then, you know, let's see the credentials of the people that think that he's guilty. Let's see the experts come forward and say, yeah, definitely that scribble by the ignition was definitely done by a finger, and I can prove it. Let's see all this kind of stuff. Let's see the explanation as to, let's hear the explanation as to why there was no photograph of the bones. Let's hear the explanation as to why there was so much DNA on the hood latch fob. Let's hear why there was so much DNA on the key. I heard somebody saying that what they had done is they got him to cool his hands and to give it a good thorough wash to really get rid of any DNA that might be on his hands, and then get him to hold it for 12 minutes. Well, guess what? He still managed to produce 10 times less DNA than was produced when the key was found. Again, the key being found. It's just so much nonsensical stuff. Anyway. Rabbiting on too much about that. This next bit is actually for Erekose. Now, I saw him last night, obviously, great video, where he was wearing his new tie, which I'd sent him, fine. I put that the tie looks good, and glad you like it, but why not try doing a full Windsor? And this is the problem. Sometimes, as I say, with guilters and with Eric, you have to give him all the information. Because he simply replied with, what? So I said, well, first of all, the tie look good means that, you know, you look great in the tie. Glad you like it means that I'm glad that I sent it to you because it was actually, I think it was given to me by my ex-wife way back then. So I'm quite happy that you have it and put it to good use. The full Windsor bit, I'm gonna demonstrate. Okay, this is been looking for this. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. You put your collar like that. Do your top button up. Okay, this is sort of like public information, isn't it? You know, this is good. Let's see if I can get this button done up, and then I can show you how to do this. This tie. See, as you get older, even the simplest of tasks become more difficult. Anyway, done. So here is the tie that I wore when I got married to my wife of now over 25 years. It still fits me, by the way. So this is what Erakose does with this tie. He just goes around like that, up and down, right? Like that. Which produces that it's okay, but it's rather a narrow knot. Okay, so it produces that narrow knot. Okay, so obviously what he was saying what do you mean by a full Windsor? Right, I'll show you the full Windsor, and I'm going to use another tie, you see, because I've got another one here. This is the one, my most recent tie that I picked up when I went to Shetland to celebrate their, how many years anniversary it is. Anyway, so this is the full Windsor. Okay, so pay attention, dude. There's lots of ways of doing. There's other ways besides, and this is the thing. You see, Erakose replied to me, "Of course, I know how to tie a knot," and he does know how to tie a knot, but he doesn't know how to tie all the knots. So here's how to do a full Windsor. Right, you start off as before. You go in there, right, like that, but then. Sorry, let me just rewind. You don't just wrap it around, you go back up like that, you see? Now you can see already the beginning of a triangular shape. Then you go around like that, then you go up and down, and a much nicer tie knot. That, my good friend, is a full Windsor. Okay, sorted. Simples. Bye for now.